So we're going to take a look at Minneapolis right now, where light snow is coming down. Temperatures were actually on the warmer side yesterday, 58 degrees. That's above average. And now we've got 30s and a winter weather advisory. A few inches of snow possible here as well. That lighter shade of blue showing us where we have the lighter snow, so visibility not too bad. But every once in a while you might get a burst, especially at that transition zone between rain and snow, and that can reduce visibility as well. And then you've got the windy conditions to deal with on top of that. So the thicker coats, the better. Here's a look at the snow close in on Minneapolis up towards St. Cloud. Very pretty first snow of the season. By the way, we're going to take you there live coming up in the next hour. Right now it is snowing. 34 degrees is our temperature, but check out the wind out of the west-northwest at 13 miles per hour. So that's going to make that 34 feel more like, what do you think, Jen, the upper 20s at times today?
Oh, I think so. I mean, when that snow flying around too, it's at least going to look like winter if it doesn't feel like it. So it does snow in Minneapolis in October. It's actually not that uncommon, but getting the flakes to accumulate is a little bit tougher. Minneapolis, let's talk about it here. On average, you get about 0.6 inches of snow in the month. So that's not much, right? The snowiest October goes all the way back to 1991. We had 8.2. Today is going to be less than half of that. We're only going to get about 1 to 3 in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Now, when you move to November, then the temperatures get colder. Our averages go up. Our average now 8.7 inches of snowfall. And then when you get into the winter months of December and January and February, that gets us more than 30 inches of snow. And we actually get more even after that. After February, we still add more than an extra foot of snow. That adds up to 53.4 inches of snow a season on average. It's about 5 feet, right? Not quite as tall as me. Now, we're off to a good start. We're getting snow right now. So the question is, could we get to the record season snowfall? And what is it? It's a whopping, whoo, I felt that, 98.6 inches of snow. Look how tall it is. That fell in the season of 1983-84. Will we come out like that this year? It's too soon to tell. We're just, I think, happy and excited to get a little snow to kick off the season today. So let's talk more about the snowfall, Kelly, and how much we're going to get.
Yeah, because this is eventually going to affect us in the Northeast as well. Not as much snow as what you're getting in parts of the Midwest, but we will have the wind. We'll have the cooler temperatures as well. And here's a look at the snowfall still to come in Minneapolis, about 2 to 3. That's just enough to warrant that winter weather advisory that is in effect for the Twin Cities. So the blue on this map, that's your snow. The green, of course, is your rain. It's a chilly rain for Marquette before the cold air gets here, and then we see that transition, which is indicated in pink, more of a wintry mix out there. For northern Wisconsin, we certainly have that going on as we go into the afternoon hours. Minneapolis, at times, that snow will be heavy enough to reduce visibility, and de-icing can cause some airport delays as well. Here comes that transition over towards Marquette, the western upper peninsula of Michigan, looking at some snow as well. And as far as those totals, yeah, there's your bullseye right there, the purple. Somebody in here, Reynolds, could see as much as 8 to 12 inches. But the wind is something we're really concerned about because that can bring down a lot of trees eventually.
You're right about that. In fact, if you take a look at this behind me, you know, there's something worse than a bad report card. The report card we had yesterday for parts of the Northeast, including Massachusetts, this is the number of reports we had of non-thunderstorm wind damage, okay? The thing to consider is that we're going to have even stronger wind into this weekend, which means the potential of more of these things toppling. The big issue that we have is anywhere from, say, a foot to 2 feet or so below the surface. That's even 90% of your anchoring system for these beautiful trees. And with the heavy rain that comes down, what it can do, it can really loosen up that anchor system. So think of these as being like sails in a giant clipper ship, right? And when you sustain winds, something's got to give. And quite often, the thing it gives happens to be these trees. The strong winds can just uproot them very quickly, like a dandelion in the breeze. The leaves and the fruit can make the tree very heavy. You've seen the calendar. You know what time of year it is. So I'm thinking widespread power outages and widespread tree damage truly could be a sure bet. And look at the water we have to come all the way, Jen, to Monday afternoon, evening, 3 to 5 inches possible.
Yeah, this storm is quite the big deal. We've got that forecast, plus the World Series changing the conversation about Houston. The Astros are lifting the city's spirits following a devastating time. Coming up, what it means to be Houston strong. And we get your Friday started with your top 3 weather stories. We'll throw the maps on the floor and show you what's happening. It is snowing, the first snow of the season in Minnesota right now, coming down in the Twin Cities. We'll talk about how much and then where this is going next. Behind it, the real chill, the first big chill of the season. Temperatures are going down to freezing and below, and not warming up a lot during the day, too. So we've got to talk about that. Plus, by the time we get through the weekend, we've got another big storm coming into the Northeast. This one bringing a lot of wind and a lot of rain. So we're going to time this out. This is sort of like the perfect storm. There are some things about it that we are comparing it to. Kelly, it's this one is going to mean travel delays.
Yeah.
It's going to be big
Trees
impacts.
coming down.
Trees down.
Kind of
yes.
a scary forecast for this weekend before Halloween, of course. A lot of plans going on. There you go, half past the hour. Yeah, call it the big chill because yesterday, Minneapolis, 50s, and now we've got the snow coming down.
Yes, and so we've got that for you along with what's happening in the Midwest. Reynolds, we've got snow out there this morning.
Yeah, we've got several inches in some places, especially across northern parts of Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan. So millions waking up to that pretty first snow of the season. Not so pretty, though, when you have to drive in it. And then we're talking about the wind gusts, the heavy rain. Needless to say, driving in the upper Midwest is going to be downright dangerous, Jen.
I mean, look at that video from Mentor. It looks like winter. You got the snow, and it's tiny little flakes, too, that were just getting picked up in the wind right here. I mean, visibility is so reduced. And you look out in the distance, oh, God, it's like, is it here to stay? Is winter here to stay? It's actually a pretty quick hitter. So let's talk about the snowfall. You can see it right now on the radar coming down from the arrowhead of Minnesota, continuing now into the Twin Cities. Now, the snow has begun. Your morning commute, you are dealing with snow. Luckily, the road temperatures are still pretty warm, so we're not anticipating a lot of accumulation on the roadways, and air temperatures are still in the low 30s. But there will be some slushy spots. We're going to get a couple of inches. Your front steps could be slippery, and this wind blowing around the snow will reduce visibility, and that in itself will be a travel hazard. So keep that in mind today. We're watching these winter weather advisories that are up through noon across Minnesota. Hangs on a little bit longer across the UP of Michigan, where we get some help from Lake Superior, and we'll be adding up to maybe up to a foot of snow up there off of in the UP. All right, let's go to Kelly for the next storm that we're watching.
Yeah, then there's a storm that's yet to form, right, along the East Coast. We're going to be tracking that, moving up the coast and bringing in the wind and even tapping some tropical moisture. So take a look at the front, moving through, and you can also see the impacts for a place like Philadelphia, where it's going to be windy starting late Sunday right through your Monday morning commute. So plan accordingly, Philly. We've got 2 to 3 inches of rain on the way as well, and then eventually some cooler air. But I mentioned that tropical moisture, of course, that Invest area that we are currently watching down south of Florida, that's going to be impacting us as well as that gets drawn up into this area of low pressure that's going to be developing along this frontal boundary. So that means rainfall is going to be significant. That wind off the water, perhaps causing some coastal flooding already. Small craft advisories in effect along the New England coastline. So here's a look at the rainfall today. We track it moving toward the east. You're more likely to hear some rumbles of thunder down along the southern end of this front as we go today into tomorrow. And then eventually Sunday, this is when it gets really interesting as that low gets cranking. The winds get picking up too. I mean, yesterday we had winds between 20 and 30, even up to 35 miles per hour in Boston, downing trees. We're going to have winds even stronger than that, perhaps even gusting as high as 50 miles per hour. So power outages, a likelihood, and of course delays at the airports. It is not looking like a pretty Monday at all, Reynolds.
Oh, yeah, certainly does not. You know, folks, seeing the maps and seeing the highs and lows move across like chess pieces on a board, that's one thing. But if you're wondering how it's going to translate to your city, here you go. Philadelphia, 35 mile per hour gust really kicking in as you get into the late Sunday and then into Monday morning. The rainfall, well, that's going to be from Sunday all the way through Monday, but 24 hours of it. The total could range anywhere from 2 to 3, but there could be outliers, maybe as much as 4 in some locations. Other places maybe a little bit less. New York City, kind of similar, 35 mile an hour gust on Monday morning, but keep in mind downtown, the winds could really be strong, very, very strong between those buildings. The rain is going to be from Saturday evening into Monday morning. So starts a little bit earlier here, rain total from 1 to 2, so considerably less expected. For Boston, this is where the winds are going to be some of the strongest, right at 50 miles an hour. Places like Cape Cod, it is going to be roaring out there. Boston Harbor, whitecaps can be expected. Rain from Sunday morning into Monday evening. Looks like, Kelly, rainfall totals anywhere from 1 to 2 inches.
We're going to go coast to coast now with your weather headlines on this Friday morning. And more than a month after Hurricane Maria, crews are working to repair power grids. But 75% of the territory remains still without electricity. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo returned yesterday from a trip to the island.
They say to me in New York, you know, this is a 1 in a 100-year storm. We have 1 in 100-year storms about 4 times a year now. So anyone who doesn't believe in climate change, I think, is in a state of denial. Either climate change is a reality or Mother Nature is having a nervous breakdown. You know, it's one or the other. But I would plan to be prudent that situations are going to happen again. And how do we make sure we don't have the same amount of damage next time?
Senator Bernie Sanders will be heading to Puerto Rico later today. Travel next.
Welcome back, everyone. AMHQ's travel headquarters. Taking a look at Minneapolis this morning. You are getting your first snowfall of the season. Oh, yeah. Make sure that car is prepared. Allow extra time for your commute. If you're not familiar with beautiful Twin Cities, know that the bridges and overpasses are most susceptible to getting some icing at first. So just be careful out there. Yeah, it's all going to be a blur this morning. How about it? If you're wanting more about the forecast and what you can expect, let's send it right back over to Kelly.
Reynolds, you are right. Time to brush up on those winter driving skills. Maybe you just moved to Minneapolis from like a southern city. Remember, put those low beams on as you're traveling through the snow, especially when it's reducing visibility. And we do have some wind out there that could do just that. So red lights out there, that means slow down, and you might even need to come to a stop at times. Temperatures just barely above freezing mark, but the good news is yesterday we were in the mid to upper 50s. So the ground is still relatively warm, and of course the pavement, we'll see some melting out there, but it all depends on the snowfall rate. Sometimes it can overcome the warm ground, and you can see still for the PM rush, we're going to be dealing with that snow blowing sideways at times. Reynolds?
Okay, thanks so much. Well, as Houston rebuilds after Hurricane Harvey, the Astros responded by, well, they clinched their first World Series berth since 2005.
Concetta Callahan is in Houston, where Game 3 will be played tonight. For Astros fans, this series really does mean the world.
Go Astros, baby! Go Astros!
They gave me a heart attack last night, but we back. Go Astros! But we back. Houston strong, baby!
In those difficult days, we wanted to come home. We wanted to see our families, make sure everything was okay. We wanted to help the city of Houston as much as we could.
Obviously, this storm was very devastating, over 50 inches of rain in a 4-day period, and it displaced so many in our community. But the game of baseball and the Astros coming back and playing ball and being involved and then having the kind of year that we've had has really given the city of Houston a ray of sunshine in what has been a very probably dark moment, one of the darkest moments in the history of the city.
It's no secret that this city has endured a lot throughout the whole year, and it touched me, and you can ask everyone in the clubhouse in different ways, and all we wanted to do was get back and lend in a hand.
There's something special in the air when we play at Minute Maid Park.
Well, Houston Strong is resiliency.
Go Astros!
It's the fact that we help one another and in times of need, and that our team helps each other on the field. So that's why I think they represent Houston Strong.
For us to be able to just play baseball for a couple hours, and for those people to be able to have a little bit of joy, to get away from what they were having to go through is pretty special to be able to give that to them.
First pitch is set for just after 8 o'clock Eastern, and if tradition holds true, the roof will be closed as it has been in the past for playoff games. In Houston, Concetta Callahan, The Weather Channel.
And as you march the turnstiles and make your way out to the field, you kind of know what the forecast can hold.
Yes. So apparently the players want it closed too. They said there's sort of more electricity in the atmosphere when it's closed. It's been closed for most of their games. Only 14 out of 78 games had the roof open. So
a lot of the players they like it because it's louder.
Yeah.
The sound stays in there. Well, look at this. How does this sound? Your forecast as we go from 5 p.m. all the way through the late innings, cooling down a little bit, but hey, it's Houston.
So when you're walking out to your car after the game, temperatures dropping in the 50s.
There you go. Well, from baseball to football, a member of the Houston Texans actually helping to make a difference as well.
That's right, guys. Texas defensive end J.J. Watt announced that, what he's going to do with that money that he raised for victims of Hurricane Harvey. Watt says the money will go to 4 nonprofit groups to rebuild homes and child care centers. It will also be used to provide food and medical care for people in the Houston area. Watt launched his campaign to help just days after Harvey hit Southeast Texas. He had hoped to raise $200,000, but guess what? He ended up raising more than $37 million. So Texans defensive end J.J. Watt has announced what he'll do with that money, and it's really going for a nice cause. Jen, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. We also, coming up this morning, will show you this weekend. The storm coming will put millions under the threat of destructive winds and heavy flooding. So ahead, how a disturbance in the Caribbean will make this storm that we're tracking for you even more powerful. First, Reynolds has your weekend forecast. Reynolds, it's going to be cold for many behind this first big front.
It certainly will be, okay? So that's going to be the big hammer. It's going to be that storm system. Very quickly, let's roll through it. Saturday and Sunday, we see it moving to the eastern coast. It will be affecting millions for continued coverage. You're at the right place. You're watching the Weather Channel. See you after this.
So much more ahead as we head into the weekend right here on AMHQ. Snow falling this morning in the Midwest. It's really the first big snowstorm of the season. Several cities could end up with half a foot of snow. And And for those of you living along the East Coast, you want to keep an eye on that snow and a tropical system that right now is known as 93L. So when the two meet up this weekend, it's going to create a monster-sized storm from Florida to Maine, creating horrible driving conditions along the I-95 corridor. And of course, this is all happening on Halloween weekend. So how will this impact your spooky plans and festivities and what your costume should be? We're going to time it out for you from now into Tuesday, Halloween. AMHQ is coming back right after your local on the 8th.
Welcome back to AMHQ. Yes, we are still talking tropics. Our hurricane season does go through the end of November, and there is something that we are monitoring. And on the eastern Pacific side of things, over here we've got Tropical Storm Selma. But we're going to focus on this invest area, 93L, under investigation by the National Hurricane Center. So, of course, when they're investigating an area, they can put model data on it and figure out exactly where it's going to go and who it's going to impact. And the chances for development, in other words, becoming our next depression or tropical storm, is about 50%, both in the near term and the next 5 days, as it heads northward in the general direction of the Cayman Islands, Jamaica being impacted as well as western Cuba, expecting some very heavy rain out of this system. Here's a look at the model data. You can see all the spaghetti plots putting them right through the Florida Straits here. And even though we don't actually see it, making a landfall, for instance, we do see that tropical moisture enhancing that rainfall. So some parts of the Keys could actually see as much as 3 to 5 inches of rain, 1 to 2 across central Florida as well. But what does this mean for people living even north along the East Coast, Jen?
So as it turns out, Kelly, this is going to be a huge storm when we combine what's happening in the Caribbean, that moisture right there, and you can see already how it's connected up here into what we're dealing with into southeastern Canada. But can combine it with this front as it comes east. So the front that's bringing us snow right now in Minnesota, that's bringing a huge change in cold air all across the plains, that's happening as we speak. That front is going to be on the move, and we watch that continue to move through the southeast into the mid-Atlantic as we get into Saturday and Sunday. And then by Sunday, our tropical moisture and the low associated with that is moving up along the eastern seaboard. Both are combining in here, and two things are going to happen. One, there's a big influx of tropical moisture coming in, and you see that with this higher amount of precipitable water. That is going to get fed into our system as it moves into the northeast. So the biggest rain totals are going to be here. So let's talk about that first. That's one piece of the system that's going to be very impactful. Flooding is going to be a concern. It's happening on Sunday, especially ramping up into Sunday night, and then continuing into early Monday across New England. We will see very heavy rain coming down as, again, that tropical moisture continues to get fed right into this area. We're talking about amounts of moisture in the atmosphere that are 250% of normal. So that's how we end up with 3 to 5 inches of rain. River flooding is going to be a concern, and just heavy rain on top of saturated ground after what we've seen. The other side to the story is the wind. And take a look. So this is the low pressure that's going to be on our front, little wave of low pressure on the front. And, we'll have the front right in here as we get into Sunday. This is Sunday morning. So watch that. And then our moisture comes up and our tropical low, not to say that the two are going to combine, but, air moves towards lower pressure. So all of the air funneling into the lowest of the pressure, and it gets low. This is the GFS forecast. So we go from 106 to 981 millibars. That's more than a 24 millibar drop in 24 hours. That's bombogenesis. And if you believe the European, that model has an even lower pressure. By Monday morning, we've got a 974 low. You see all these isobars tightly packed right here? All these isobars tightly packed mean that we're going to have a lot of strong winds, because wind always moves towards low pressure, from higher pressure to low pressure. And Reynolds wind and wind damage, a big concern as we get to beginning Sunday into Monday. Winds causing a lot of travel delays as well.
Yeah, tremendous story affecting millions, no doubt about it. As we watch the storm target the Northeast this weekend, we have some weather history. So weather history buffs can't help but compare its features to the perfect storm.
She's not going to let us out.
You may remember the movie based on the killer extratropical event. The storm swept away the crew of the Andrea Gale. That storm formed on October 28, 1991, hammering coastal areas through Halloween. 26 years ago this weekend. This storm formed on October 25th. The perfect storm's lowest pressure recording 972 millibars. Now, this weekend system is forecast by some models to have a very similar pressure. The 91 storm, fueled by tropical rains in the warm waters of the Atlantic, was shrouded in fierce nor'easter winds, more than 70 miles an hour. This weekend's storm is smaller in size, but also is supposed to be a very quick hitter. So while it will pack a punch, it really does deserve your attention. So let's be clear. We're not saying that the Northeast is about to get hit with a Hollywood-worthy weather event. But when meteorologists see pressure drop like this one, especially this time of year, it's hard not to think back to the perfect storm, the big one.